All right, in studio today, we had the pleasure of welcoming Ironman world champion Chelsea Sodaro. This was a great conversation with Chelsea. We cover so many topics, including how she got into triathlon, a little bit about her epic win at the 2022 Ironman World Championship in Kona. We really walk through some of the things she was thinking during that day and a little bit about the build-up going into it. We also talk a lot about some of the changes she's had in the recent 2 years, some location changes, moving to Boulder, coaching changes, and all of that was very insightful for me to understand. We also hit some of the hot topics that she's well known for talking about, whether that's women's sports or motherhood or equality, things she's very passionate about, and we discussed that in today's podcast. Overall, really enjoyed this episode with Chelsea, and I know you will too, so enjoy this one with Chelsea Sodaro. All right, welcome to another episode of the Endurance Matters podcast. I'm your host, Justin Metzler, and in the studio today is an absolute superstar, world champion, Chelsea Sodaro. Chelsea, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Justin. It's so fun to be here with you.
Awesome. I start off the podcast with a very hard-hitting question, really, kind of get it going. If you had to choose a theme song for every time that you ran down the finish line, what would it be and why?
Okay, this is actually really easy for me.
Nice.
My husband insists that the next time I get to choose a walkout song, it's going to be Who Let the Dogs Out.
Perfect.
And my daughter is like so into it. So we'll sing like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And then at the end, my husband will be like, but who let the dogs out? And she thinks it's the funniest thing ever. So that would be it.
Oh, nice. That is an exceptional answer. I was trying to think what mine would be, but that's so good. All right. Well, cool. Yeah, I have so much prepared for this interview. I feel like we could talk about a million things. I definitely want to talk a little bit about how you got into triathlon. I don't know if everyone knows that story. So I guess walk me back only a couple years now about how you got into triathlon and sort of how this journey started for you.
Yeah, I'm really a lifelong runner, and my big goal was to make the Olympics in running. I had an up and down career at UC Berkeley on the track and cross country team there. I was injured a lot. I really didn't have my health figured out. And it wasn't until my fifth year that I kind of broke out and was running some sort of national level times, becoming All-American. I had no sponsorship offers after graduating. No agents were calling me up, and just decided to give it a go on my own. My husband was also pretty newly out of university and was working a bunch of random jobs so that I could train full time. And we just went all in and decided to see what would happen. And I quickly won a couple of national titles and thought, I'm making it. I signed a super small endorsement deal with a shoe company and proceeded to be injured off and on for the next 3 years. Had a really bad day at the Olympic trials in 2016. And my shoe deal was up. I thought, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I had been watching triathlon from a distance. The American women were super competitive in Rio. And Steve looked to me on the couch and said, you should try that. You'd be really good. You're always hurt. You know how to swim and bike. Give it a go. And I thought it was a stupid idea. But he had a carbon frame that had been gifted to him and got a bike build up for me. I joined a master's group and got obsessed, as we do.
Wow, that's awesome. How deep was your swimming background at that point? Did you have any swimming experience? Because you're an exceptional swimmer now. You wouldn't ever tell that you maybe picked up swimming late.
Well, that's very generous of you to say. I have worked really hard at it. I grew up in Davis, California, where Dave Scott is from, actually. We have an infrastructure there that's really set up for biking. All the kids do summer swim league. So I would cruise around town on, a bike from Target or whatever. And I did summer swim team starting probably when I was 5 or 6, but I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't very good at it. And I quit by the time I was maybe 10. I was injured a few times, so I would jump in with my brother's team. My brother was a very good swimmer and ended up playing collegiate water polo. So I think maybe it's in my blood a little bit, but really rediscovered it as a grown-up when I was 27. I had to kind of learn to swim again, and I ended up joining an ITU squad and was fully immersed. The swimmers there, the triathletes there were very good swimmers, and it was a sink or swim situation where I had to make the send-off or leave. So I was swimming 35K a week for 2 years, just going all in. And I think in retrospect, that's really paid off for me now.
Yeah, that's huge. Coming from running, I know in the running world, the Olympics is such a massive North Star for a lot of those athletes. coming from a running background, was that sort of the same mindset when you got into triathlon? Like, oh, okay, I wasn't necessarily able to achieve this in running. I really want to go for it in triathlon.
Yeah, initially I was still committed to the Olympic dream, and that's why I, joined the ITU squad. I was an international squad based in San Diego and was kind of thrust onto the circuit, first at the Continental Cup level and then at the World Cup level. And at that time, it was so competitive that it was really hard to get onto a WTCS starting line. So I actually, 18 months into that process, I won a World Cup in Mexico. And I was there by myself. Like, I had no teammates or coach or family there, and I win this race, which is kind of supposed to like be the launching pad of my Olympic career. And I just felt like super lonely, was not having fun. I really didn't enjoy the short course racing and thought this is not for me. So at that point, I actually quit triathlon for a few weeks. This was in the summer of 2018.
And how do you go from that to, okay, I'm going to jump into a 70.3 now, which you ultimately ended up winning, right? Winning your first or second 70.3 at Indian Wells?
Yeah, I call Indian Wells my first 70.3 because I actually did Waco a few weeks earlier and the swim was canceled. And I feel like that is not a real.
Doesn't count. It doesn't count.
But I think there was still a piece of me, which is kind of a theme that has carried on throughout my career. There has just always been this deep intrinsic belief that I'm capable of great achievement in sport. And there was, just still something inside where I thought, like, this isn't over for me. And I had some people in my life at that time and a couple of coaches like speaking into my life who said, I think you can be good at this longer stuff and just give it a go. And at that time, I was starting to work with Matt Dixon of Purple Patch out of San Francisco. And before I did a 70.3, he said, I want you to go to this training camp with Sarah Piampiano in Kona. And I was like, Matt, I just quit ITU. I'm not doing training camps anymore. I don't want to leave home. I have no money, like literally negative money right now. I'm not doing it. And somehow he talked me into it. And I spent 10 days in Kona with Sarah, totally fell in love with the Big Island. I think they kept on expecting me to get dropped from sessions, but I just kept on getting better the longer I was in that environment. And it's just crazy foreshadowing because the assistant coach that was there pulled me aside during a swim. He was like, Chelsea, come here. I thought I was in trouble. He goes, grab onto my paddleboard. Come here. I need to talk to you. And I was like, what's wrong, Paul? And he goes, you could win this race one day. And when you start to have other people like that believing in you and telling you that you can be great, you start to believe it yourself.
Totally. That's huge. Amazing segue to my next question. I really want to focus a bit on that 2022 season. For those that don't know, I mentioned it in the introduction. Chelsea won the World Championship in Kona, which is kind of the pinnacle of the sport. She was also the first mother to do so. Is that
Second
correct?
mother.
Second mother.
Natasha Bodman had a kid. Maybe first new mom. I think her child was 12 when she won. So
Still incredibly impressive. I want to dive into that year specifically because it was somewhat of a breakthrough performance. You had very good results going into that through 2019. Obviously, the pandemic year, not a lot of results happening. 2021, but 2022, you sort of get this you hit this stride. You had 3 podium finishes leading into the World Championships that year at 70.3 Mallorca, Hamburg, and the Canadian Open, which was super competitive. That sort of propels you onto the world stage. Did you have a sense that season that things were clicking and you were on track for a special performance?
Not really. I think I was honestly truly in survival mode at that point. My daughter was, a year old when that season started, and I was dealing with a lot of mental health challenges at the time, which I've spoken to, but I was sort of white knuckling through a lot and trying to still be competitive in the sport. I was very much postpartum from a health standpoint, trying to, get my body back together in one piece and also managing new motherhood and having a child. My husband was working full time then and we didn't have great childcare. So trying to piece together the training and racing. And honestly, that Hamburg race was the first time where I was having fun again and also feeling like, maybe this Ironman thing is for me. I had so much fun in that race, which was surprising. I think when you go into your first Ironman, you're like, I don't know how this is going to go. Can I even finish this? Can I even accomplish the distance? And I left that race thinking, I can, there's more in me here. Of course, along the way, there were so many up and downs. Edmonton was, a world stage at that time where there was so much money in the T100, and getting on the podium there was like life-changing for us. And, I hawked down Laura Phillip at the end to get third. I had this like kick. My running was kind of coming back. But then I totally shit the bed at the Collins Cup a month later and got really sick. My husband had to talk me into going to my training camp in Kona, actually. He said, just get on the plane. If you don't feel good, then you can take a 2-week vacation in Kona by yourself. And like, that is music to the ears of a sleep deprived mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, really like came around, and my preparation for Kona went well, but I never like did the math of what my fitness would add up to on the course. I just like went out there to execute a day and hopefully not get my butt kicked and see what I could do. But there were so few expectations on me.
Yeah, that's massive. To walk me through a little bit of the day itself. Like, were you kind of having this positive momentum through the race that propelled you all the way to the finish line? Were there hard moments in the race where you were questioning whether or not getting on the podium or even winning the race was possible? Or was it just one of those days where the gun fired in the morning, you start swimming and you're like, okay, I'm on one today?
What's so bizarre about that race and that week is that I was, I didn't get invited to any like press conference. I had no media. So like no one, I don't even know if anyone was picking me for the top 10. And there were very few there was very little external pressure. My team manager at the time said to Steve, it'd be really nice if she'd get in the top 10. I didn't know about this. And Steve said to him, she's going to be on the podium. And the guy was like, a top 10 would be really nice. But I was so nervous. Like, I could hardly eat race week. I think I had a healthy fear of the island and what the race demands. And of course, it's a very big stage. So I didn't feel external pressure, but like internally, I felt like this is going to go really well or it's going to go really poorly. And on race morning, I had just like fear in my eyes, and Rinny saw me at the transition, and she came up to me and gave me a huge hug. I was like, I really needed that. And she said, you're going to do great. And once I got in the water, I just felt this sense of peace, and the gun goes off, and I kind of get into this good swim group, and I look over to my right and I see this rainbow, and it was such a great symbol for the day. I just kind of pretended like I was on a fun swim with my girlfriends and took the race one step at a time. I ended up losing all my nutrition like halfway through the race and thought, oh, that's a bummer, but problem solved, and went out hard on the run. I just felt good and got into my rhythm and ended up getting into the lead, I think 7 miles in. So led 19 miles of the marathon and was so committed to my process and my mantras and executing my day that I didn't allow myself to consider winning until the very end.
Yeah. What were some of the thoughts that you were telling yourself for those 19 miles? Were you tapping into maybe some of the hardships that you had experienced in the previous 18 months coming back from giving birth and having a child, or maybe just this like sort of somewhat rapid ascension from having no money in your bank account to, okay, now I'm actually like a player trying to win a world title? Sort of what's going through your mind, or is it just so process oriented, like step after step?
When I'm racing, and especially when I'm racing at my best, I am very present. And so I just tell myself to stay here and focus on one breath and one step at a time. And I actually don't think a lot about my family or my daughter. Like, that's very emotional to me, and I want to be all about execution. I've spoken about this quite a bit, but all of that week, Sky was a year and a half and in this phase of saying no to everything. And so my dad would dance with her in our Airbnb and say, yes, 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 yes. This got stuck in my head. So like for most of the bike and the run, to every stride and pedal stroke, I was like, yes, 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 yes. Awesome. And this was just like all about, I think, and it's become this mantra for me and for other people. When I go race now on the sidelines, people will yell to me, yes, yes, yes. And it's all about like leaning into the hard moments and recommitting to yourself and pushing forward when things get tough. So on that particular day, I did a really good job at just staying where my feet were and moving forward one step at a time. And it's amazing on those days how fun it is. It's really hard, and you honestly forget a little bit, about the challenges that you went through on the day, but I had a lot of crowd support and I was very present and able to soak it all in.
Yeah, that's huge. How about when you're out there on the race course and you see Steve or you see Skylar? Because I know from my perspective, some of the best races that I've had are sort of emotionally charged in some way. Like if I'm having a really good race and I'm about to win or I'm about to get on the podium and I see my dad or I see my wife, Jeannie, like you're almost overcome with this emotion because they're so along with you on the ride of all the ups and the downs. Are you just trying to not sort of look at them? Are you trying to not let those emotions creep in, or do you just let it kind of happen if it does?
Yeah. Sky is, still so little and was even tinier then. So she wasn't out on the course much. My mom tries to get her to the swim exit or transition. So I'll occasionally see her. But when Steve is with me at races and during race week, we've really become more colleagues than husband and a wife. We're really working together for the goal. He does a good job of getting out on a bike for most of the run courses. And so I saw him a lot on that day. And because I was out front, I just felt like it was me and him working through the marathon all day together. Yeah. And I'm so proud of our relationship outside of triathlon and our work, of course. But I think we've done a really good job of, continuing to work as a team as it's become this business and professional partnership. And that was on full display that day.
Yeah, huge. It's definitely not easy. I think you see that a lot. And I've had a lot of conversations like that even in this studio because my wife's a professional triathlete. It is all under the same umbrella. It's kind of the business. It can get intense. And I think it's impressive and commendable when you can sort of find that balance between all right, we're husband and wife, we're parents, we're business partners, we're whatever. And so to have it all come together on a day is really cool. I think one of the famous moments from that race before we move on was just sort of your reaction at the finish line. I want to hear what that was. Was it shock? Was it elation? Were you exuberated? What really was the thought process, or what were you feeling?
Yeah, when I got into the lead at 7 miles in coming up Palani, one of the race photographers said to me, "Chelsea Sodaro, you are leading the Ironman World Championships. Can you believe it?" And I just thought in my head, shut up. There's so much race left to go.
Yeah.
And that was my attitude for the rest of the day. And in the last 5 or 10K, I said, you can enjoy this if you make it to the last 2K with a good lead. And so those last 8 minutes or whatever, I did soak it in. And like I said, I never, did the math of what my fitness or performance could lead to. And on that day, it ended up being the second fastest time ever on that course and a win. And I just grabbed the tape and I couldn't stop saying, oh my God, I really believe that I can win this race again. And I'm working really hard and building a team around me that will hopefully enable that. But there's never going to be another race like that one in 2022 for me because, it was the first. It was such a surprise for me and for everybody else. And it was just so pure, my team was tiny. There was not a whole lot of money involved at that time. There weren't a ton of resources getting poured into me. And so it was super scrappy the way we got there. And I think the most important people were there at the finish line, which was Steve and my daughter and my parents. And there's no way I would have made it to the starting line without any of them. And so to have that moment there, with the lights on the biggest stage of our sport and to kind of see to be on that stage where your community is witnessing like a decade's worth of work come together on one day is really special.
It's so cool. I mean, like, I can totally relate to those days where it's just like, obviously I can't relate to winning a world title, but I can relate to a day where it's just, it feels pure. It's coming. Like, you just get that joy from it. And that's so cool that you're able to do that on the world's biggest stage. And kind of like now, you've reaped the rewards from that. And it's just very, very cool and very interesting. So I want to talk a little bit now about fast forward to the future, which really wasn't that long ago. It was only 2 years ago, right?
Isn't it funny in pro sports, right? They're just moments. Yeah. And as soon as honestly, like on that day that I finished that race, I had people asking me, when are you going to have another baby? How much longer are you going to keep on doing this? When are you going to retire? And I'm like, I'm 33 years old. This is my second Ironman. Like, I am just getting started in this game. And I still feel that way today, right? Like, that was only 2 years ago. I really think I'm still getting better. Our sport is getting better really quickly. It's more competitive than ever, but like the future is really bright. And, a lot of people want to make you feel like you're a flash in the pan or that like you're only as good as your last performance. But I have been taught really well by some of my mentors that you are as good as your best performance. And so that's what I like continue to hold on to through all of the ups and downs, which we all go through.
Oh, I'll hold on to that. That's a very good piece of advice and very poignant for me right now. So thank you. But I think even the results themselves are proving that you're not a flash in the pan. You started 2024 off incredibly strong. You had 2 wins back to back, 70.3 Tasmania, Ironman New Zealand. I was actually at Ironman New Zealand, watched you perform incredibly well there. You just dominated the race. When did you feel like you needed to start making some changes to your team? Because like you said, in 2022, it was kind of a tight-knit group. Was it a matter of, okay, now I'm a bigger brand, I have more resources at my disposal, I'm going to take advantage of that? Or did you feel as though in order to get to the next step, you needed to start making some changes?
I think that some things just run their course, and what maybe served us at one point in our lives or work, doesn't serve us later on. And we're all evolving and learning and changing and growing. And, this year I've had a lot of time to reflect on what I want for this next phase of my career. And I was quite overwhelmed with, like the immediate success that came with the Kona win. And it was such a privilege to be able to make a lot of choices about my team and sponsorships. But I think this year I've really gone back to, like a smaller, tight-knit group of people who are really around me for the right reasons and who really want to win, but also care about me as an individual. And like, ironically, I believe that's when athletes perform their best, when the people that they're working with are not in transactional relationships, right? Like, they really lift you up as a human and they are there for you on the good days and the bad days. And I had to take a hard look at, who I was involved with and see if I was on the right path for myself, and made some really big changes this summer. I do not think that I would have made it to the start line in Nice without those changes. I feel really strongly about that. This is the happiest I think I've been in my career and the most supported I've felt in my career. In Nice, I was there with Steve, my husband, my mental coach, David Spindler, and my strength coach, Matt Pindola, and just felt so uplifted and joyful. And like, they were all there because they wanted to be there and they believed in me. But no matter how the race went, they would be there the day after and in it with me for the long haul. I think, some of the changes in sponsorship and in coaching, like, I'm not seeing the immediate rewards of that right now. These are like decisions for next year and the year after, and to keep me in this game for the next 5 years, but really excited about where things are headed.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. I think like it's cliche, but a happy athlete is a fast athlete. So even if there's not like you're seeing a physiological improvement in 2 months' time, you're not going to see that. But if you are happy, you're going to race better. You're going to enjoy it more. It's going to reap rewards in the short term. And like you said, you might have not even made it to Nice without those changes. So that's huge. How does Boulder become part of the discussion?
Originally, we thought we wanted to move back to California. We'd been living in Reno, Nevada for almost 3 years for my husband's job, and he quit his job last year to stay home full-time with our daughter and support me more on the day-to-day with my racing and training. So we didn't need to be there anymore. And originally, we're thinking of moving back to Marin County, and I was at a photo shoot with the feed for the Tour de France commercial, and there were just some amazing folks there who were super welcoming and kind and awesome, specifically Jake McGee and Hannah Schell, who are cyclists in town. And I came home from that shoot and I was like, Steve, what do you think about Boulder? And we called our realtor, who's Sarah Piampiano, former pro triathlete, on a Wednesday. He flew here on Thursday, and we were in contract on our house on Saturday. I moved here without ever seeing our house, actually, which is a little crazy, but it all worked out. This is, it's like the mecca of endurance sports. And I came and trained here in the summer of 2021, right after we'd had our daughter, and I loved it. I just felt like immediately embraced by the community and thought it was awesome. Like, the riding and running is so accessible. There's a billion pools here. And I think it took a little while for Steve to get sold on the idea. We also have friends here outside of the sport. So not so much always obsessing over triathlon, but it's great, to have the opportunities to train with people who are better than me, and then also have friends who don't want to talk about swimming, biking, and running.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this place kind of does capture your imagination. It's just a very cool place. I mean, that's when I came here 10 years ago. It was like, oh yeah, this just feels right. It makes sense here, Yeah. So I guess a follow-up question to that was the decision to move here, and maybe I know the answer to this already because you just answered it a little bit. Was it performance-based in majority, or was it lifestyle-based in majority?
Honestly, both. I knew that I could train successfully here and really be surrounded by a community that is interested and conducive to high performance. But, we do obviously think a lot about our family life and, where we want to raise our daughter. And the schools here are amazing. And we knew that our family would be really happy here, whether or not I was racing or not.
Yeah, totally. 100%. You mentioned the team that surrounds you now, Steve, obviously being a big part of that. Talk to me a little bit more about the team as a whole. You said you've pared it back a little bit and kind of decreased the amount of people maybe involved. Who are sort of the key players, and what role do they play? And then additionally, what are you doing? Because you mentioned having more access to greater resources now, having been a world champion. How much of that are you taking on board, and how much of it are you just going back to what works for yourself?
Yeah, so kind of the core team of people that I work with is Neil Henderson. He is based here, a coach here based in Boulder. He has had incredible success both in triathlon and then also in time trialing. He's coached world champions in time trialing. He's coached hour records. He has a brilliant mind, but is also a very kind human, which has been a great balance for me. I have a lot of trust and belief in the training and his approach to racing and cycling specifically. But also he has a lot of empathy. And whenever I mention to somebody that I'm working with Neil Henderson, they just say, "Oh, I love Neil. He's so awesome." And it's been a great fit, a great change. It became very clear when I started working with him that I was super tired, and that I had been very tired for a very long time. And I guess, the initial work we did was really helping me, reset and get my energy back. And with that comes more motivation and excitement to train. And I had come to a point where I was sort of just going through the day. It felt like sort of day-to-day drudgery. And now I can't wait to get on my bike. And I think that's because of his approach and the way he frames training and holds me back, isn't always pushing me over the edge. and has instilled a lot of like confidence. I think we forget sometimes as endurance athletes that we're professionals because we do have some level of talent and we always like want to outwork everybody, but sometimes we just need to rely a little bit on our talent and our natural gifts. And, you know, we work hard. Of course, working hard is like the point, the point of entry, but we need to remember that we're actually pretty good at what we do. And that's why we're here. So he's helped me remember that, which has been fun.
Was there a process of unraveling that you guys had to go through at the onset of your relationship, or was it just a simple, like a few simple tweaks, or was there kind of this big, sort of undoing process?
Well, when I first met with him and, you know, was thinking of making a change, I said, you know, what do you think of like what I'm doing here? And he said, I think you're doing a really good job of making yourself very tired. Not necessarily doing things that are helping you get a lot better. And so my prescription of training is much different now than it's been for the last few years. And he's often reminding me that the lower end of the range is still a successful day, or make sure you hold yourself back here, or stop one interval short, or you come out of the session feeling like you could do more, but don't actually do more. And I think we need more coaches like that in long distance triathlon. Yeah, like especially when you are in this game for a long time, you know, you accumulate a body of work and you don't always need to be outdoing yourself or one-upping yourself, which is what I think I'd been doing for the last year, is like racing a previous version of myself in training. And sometimes we just need to like stay the course and believe in our abilities, and of course like tick the boxes of the sessions, but not constantly like try to exceed the demands of, you know, racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there elements, because you obviously were so successful building up to 2022, even the early portions of 2024 and throughout 2023, are there elements that you and Neil are extracting from previous training plans and applying to what you're doing now, or is it just a completely fresh look?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that training needs to be that complicated. Like at the end of the day, it's swimming, biking, and running, and we need to like add certain stimulus to get a physiological response. What is different now is that I have more built-in rest, and I have built-in rest weeks, which is something that I hadn't been doing before. I had gone to this place where I felt like if I'm not training at least 20 hours a week, then I'm not being successful and I'm not working hard enough. And it's difficult to, you know, absorb the training when you're not kind of properly periodizing the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also doesn't free you up to really have your mind on, or body on, anything other than just simply swim, bike, run, gym every single day, week on week on week. What are you doing with that extra time now, or that extra bandwidth, or that extra energy? Yeah,
well, I hadn't realized like how grumpy I was getting. Like my fuse was definitely shorter than it should have been, and I just felt chronically tired. I think when we are training so much for so long without properly resting, the exhaustion becomes normal. And so it's taken me, a little while to realize that that wasn't normal, and that I do have capacity for more. And it's less about like adding more onto my plate and more about enjoying the day-to-day of what I already have on my plate and just being more present with my family. And like I think about bedtime with my daughter, right? Like when you are fried from training, it can be kind of a drag.
Yeah.
And when you're like having to fight your kid to like brush her teeth and read the bedtime books. But now I just notice how much more present I am with her, like telling, I tell her these stories at night, and now instead of like just trying to get her to go to sleep as fast as I can, I'm like really there with her. Or like even on our drives to school in the morning, I can tell the way I'm interacting with her is, more calm and peaceful and thoughtful. And, at the end of the day, being a good mom is way more important to me than being a good triathlete. I think there's room for both, though, with the right approach. I think, it's such a tricky thing for me because I have spoken a lot about my motherhood and the challenges and the great parts about it. And I do get some criticism for that, which is fine. Like, I'm not for everybody, but I almost got a little self-conscious about like, rubbing people the wrong way or people being like turned off by the mom thing. And it's been really great to work with Neil because he's very considerate of my family life. And his approach is not like, if you don't do this, then you can't be successful. It's like, here are the, demands of your life and the things that are important to your life. And we're going to create a program that works with that rather than like constantly making me choose between like, the training or the commitment or being perfect and, my execution and being present with my kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question. I definitely want to transition a little bit more into your overall mindset and how you kind of operate on a day-to-day. But following up on that question, or the point that you made there about being sort of vocal about motherhood or other stances in endurance sports, why do you feel as though like you're the one to stand up for those things? Do you feel like that's part of your personality? Do you get a laugh out of it? Kind of like getting a bit of a stir on social media with people going at each other? Or do you feel like if you don't stand up for the point, then no one's going to stand up for it?
I feel like that the Kona win was obviously a great moment for me personally, but it is, borrowed title. And of course, I've only had it for 1 year. I hope to have it again, but I wanted to seize that moment. And I feel a sense of personal responsibility to leave the sport and, the world better than I found it. And that's not because I think I'm special or better than anybody else. I just know the struggles of choosing motherhood with a difficult career and what that looks like when you don't have a lot of support. And I don't want my kid to have to decide between her work and her family. I don't want her to have to think about whether or not her workplace or her sponsors, if she chooses a job like mine, to think if they're going to pay her while she's pregnant. Or, to have to feel like she needs to start training when her kid is 20 days old because she doesn't have maternity protection. And it's very uncomfortable to make change. And people are uncomfortable when they are confronted with, a different status or something different than the status quo. And so now, when I'm criticized, I try to think of it more as a reflection of other people, maybe not understanding or, feeling like they like things the way they are because they think it doesn't affect them. But we all have mothers and, these issues are things that affect us all. And I really believe, especially as female athletes, we're best in our mid to late 30s when we have this body of work and all of these miles under our belt. And if we can stay in the game long enough, then we can actually see how good we can be. And we shouldn't have to, figure out in our mid 40s if we're even able to have families anymore. So yeah, I think honestly, what I'm most proud of in this whole thing is the change that has been made. And I think that things are better now for athletes choosing motherhood than they were when I was, 4 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if nothing changes, then somebody has to fill that role. And I think if you have, the platform to do so, it's really commendable because there has been many champions before you who haven't said anything. And we've seen that the environment just kind of stays stagnant unless you have a game changer,
Yeah. And also at the end of the day, right, it's swimming, biking, and running. And it's really cool to be Ironman world champion, but I think in 20 years from now or whatever, no one's really going to care that I won Kona. But people will care that they have maternity protection or that they can defer a race because they're pregnant and not lose a ton of money, or that they have lactation stations at start lines. They'll care about those things.
Yeah. How much of your current mission statement is standing up for those things versus maybe other aspects?
Yeah, I mean, I have to be really careful about my energy and what I can handle. I think I poured a lot of myself into those, causes last year, and that certainly took a toll. And so I'm trying to be a little more deliberate about, when I speak out and, when I champion those things. and also making sure that it's effective when I do, right? Like if I'm just preaching from the mountaintops about like the causes I care about and people aren't taking them in, like it's not doing anybody any good. I've also been like pretty vocal about some of my like mental health challenges, but those are closely tied to maternity protection. Like when we don't have the right support, that leads to indirectly or directly to like mental health issues. And so I feel really passionate about both of those causes and how they're intertwined. And, as athletes, I just don't think that there's enough support or like enough transparency when it comes to mental health struggles, because it really, affects us all. And I think the less stigma there is and the more we can talk openly about it, the more likely it is that people will seek help.
Yeah, and I think like in a world where it's maybe becoming a little bit more acceptable, like that's definitely positive. And I think athletes like yourself, and I know Jeannie and I really struggled with our approach because she had some struggles herself with mental health and how we were going to navigate that in a space where in professional sport, every year is finite. Everyone's imagination is, like memory is very short in terms of race results or what have you done for me lately. And I think just it's important to have athletes like yourself, athletes like Jeannie, saying that it is a part of the world. It doesn't, it's not excluded from professional sport. And we might put on this like bravado or whatever ego as big professional athletes, but it is a real issue that I think is great to talk about and important for people like you to stand up for.
Totally. And in this era of social media and the marketing world in which we live in, a lot of people have mental health struggles and a lot of people get pregnant and have babies and they want to see themselves in their sports heroes. They want to be like their sports heroes. They want to buy the products that their sports heroes are wearing and using. And I think that if some of these companies take a hard look at who is selling product, they'd realize that it's oftentimes, the athletes and influencers that are being most authentic and honest about the things that they're going through. I mean, like, I think moms in the US, are the community that have the greatest purchasing power. So not only is it the right thing to do to support, athletes and public figures who are going through these things, it's like financially the best course. Yeah. And similarly to, mental health, like some of our greatest sports icons, Michael Phelps, Simone Biles, have been very vocal about their struggles. And I think honestly, it makes them more approachable and shows their humanity. And like consumers really dig that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I feel like, that vulnerability is a massive asset to any brand out there. How much are you involved in sort of like your paying attention to what's going on maybe on social media, because social media is such a big part of a professional athlete's brand. All of the companies that we work with want a piece of you on social media. Are you tapped in on that, seeing all the replies, seeing the positive comments, seeing the negativity, or are you just sort of like hands off, hey guys, here's what I want to do, make it happen?
Oh, it's such a tricky one. I read way less comments than I used to. Yeah, I read way less comments. I think we have to be very careful about who we allow to speak into our lives. And when I really think about like whose opinion I actually care about and I actually want to take on, right, it's a very small group of people. And those are people that know what's going on in my life and in my day to day. And so I think, I try to focus less on consuming those inputs, like both positive and negative. There's this, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget her name right now. There's this woman on the women's national team. She is like one of the superstar forwards. I forget her name. She went to Stanford and she's young and like wise beyond her years. And she says she really tries not to take in the negative or the positive because in like both scenarios, people don't know what you're going through. And that really resonated with me. I think like, we love to read like the nice things about ourselves online because it feeds into our egos, but like ultimately it's not really real. People don't really know what you're going through. So that's been my take. And I like hand my social media off a few weeks before race day to try to like really focus on myself and my own process, but it can be fun and it's a great way to connect with people. And I try to put like positive things out into the world.
Yeah, that's huge. I feel like we could talk about this stuff for forever, but I want to talk a little bit more about bring it back to the now and maybe where your motivation is lying on the race course. So where does it lie now? Is it in getting back to a place where you're winning another world title? Is it getting back to a place where you're just performing at a lifetime best level in terms of maybe your numbers or your output? Where is it lying these days?
Yeah, I still don't feel like I've reached my best across swim, bike, or run. And I'm striving for, the day when I hit it out of the park. I am so excited about the people I'm working with now. And I think what's been so cool is to see how cohesively, the members of my close team are working together, which is new. And I just feel that the best is ahead of me, and the most fun I'm going to have in my career is ahead of me. And I do have a lot of confidence in my ability and what's possible. And I really feel like my best performance is going to take care of the results.
Have you found yourself comparing your current version to a previous version and trying to work back towards that? Or do you feel like you're beyond where you've ever been before?
No, I think I'm beyond where I've ever been before. I don't know that that's really come out on the race course. I actually feel that Taupo was a super solid day. Maybe a career day is a bit of a stretch, but it was so early in the year that I don't think it got much attention, but it showed me that I'm, at the level. I am seeing things in training where I'm excited about what's possible. Our sport is evolving and everyone's having to up their game, but I think that's taken us all to a new level, and I'm super competitive. I love to win and beat people. And I think when I'm able to get to a starting line, really healthy and 90 to 95% fit, then magical things are possible.
Yeah. You mentioned it in 2022 that immediately at the finish line, people are interviewing you about having another child or getting to the next race. Are you able to actually appreciate victory now or appreciate getting onto a podium, or is coming third in Nice immediately onto the next thing?
I'm able to appreciate it a lot more now. I work with David Spindler, who is a neuroscientist, sports psychologist, and he has been such an amazing gift and really a highlight of this year. But when I won Taupo earlier this season, I got on the phone with him and he wanted to hear how the race went. And then he goes, for the next 3 days, I just want you to soak it in and not think about the next thing. And we're always so eager to move on and be excited and think well, what can I do now? And in the grand scheme of life, these careers are short and the moments are finite. And I think actually soaking in a little bit is really good for recovery and for longevity. And so, yeah, I think I'm doing a better job of enjoying the moments and the victories and the small things.
It's so hard. I mean, for all of us, we're all just so wired. I think our day to day is okay, what's the next session? What's tomorrow look like? And so to take that moment to appreciate a job well done, even if you don't perceive it as your absolute best, I think is super important. Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've talked around your family a little bit. We've talked a little bit around Sky and how important she is to your life, and obviously a massive part of it. How much does Skylar understand what you do?
I mean, I think she's starting to understand a little bit more. It's so funny to see, when you become a parent, or at least for me, I thought, I'm going to mold this little human being and it's going to be so amazing. And they come out and they're their own person with their own personality and their own ideas. And there's so much genetics involved there. So it's been fun to see her personality blossom. She is really competitive. She's 3 and she's, full on, and there's some negotiating happening. She's got lots of opinions, but if we want her to do something, we say, I'll race you there.
Perfect.
And she's all in. So I don't know. I think she knows that mommy runs and swims and bikes a lot. We try to include her in the day-to-day of my process. And one of our favorite things to do is I put her on the top tube of an e-bike
Nice.
Don't send CPS to my house. I put her on the top two of the e-bike and we cruise around the Lobo and we go see the horses, and she loves to see where they've left horse poop on the trail. And so we like cruise the horse and she goes, "Horsies, you need to stop pooping on the trail, to stop pooping on the road." She gives them a little lecture and then we cruise home and it's great.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. That's so good. What does your day in the life look like now as a mother and professional athlete, maybe compared to when you were professionally running or just getting into triathlon?
Dude, there was like way more Netflix when I was not a mom. Definitely when I was a runner, right? Like they train 12 hours a week and it's a big week. Can you imagine how much free time?
We say that all the time. Yeah.
So my day in the life, you know, as a triathlete, it's ever evolving and every day is different, but the mornings for us are like, you know, the whole rigmarole of getting her ready for school. She started school, so we get ready for school. And I try to drive her to school as much as I can, so we get that time together. And then I'll go to a swim session. I have been doing a lot of swimming with Julie Dibbins. Sometimes I swim with your crew, which has been really great. And then I have some lunch and it's off to like the next session. Sometimes, you know, an interval bike session that's 2 or 3 hours, and then either a shakeout run in the evening or maybe a little session on the run off the bike. I work really closely with Matt Pendola, who's my strength coach, and we meet 2 or 3 times a week, usually in the evenings. And then it's dinner time and bedtime, and we do it all over again. I think, yeah, it's really full and sort of busy, but I wouldn't trade it.
Yeah, I mean, you can just tell, like, you walking through that day, like, you know, you're lighting up talking about a day like that, and that's just your normal daily routine. I think just as a person, if you can be excited about your day-to-day, that's kind of the most important thing. And I don't know if any of us are getting as excited to just, like, go home and watch 5 hours of Netflix, you know? Maybe it's, like, one good show, you know?
I know, there's less TV time in our house. It's more like Bluey or Coco or something.
Yeah. What's like one very normal thing you guys do as a family, and maybe one thing that's like very sport specific or like a triathlete family type thing?
Okay. Something normal that we do. We're so normal and boring. We're like really big on the family dinners. We're like really into group hugs. It's so corny. Sky, like if Steve and I are hugging in the kitchen, Sky will like push her way in and insist on a group hug. We have play dates with her friends. It's like pretty chill. She just got a Bluey toy set, so that's sick. She has a lot of opinions, like I said, so she makes us like pretend to be the different characters. And Bluey is an Australian show, so I will like practice my Australian
bust out the accent.
Yeah. And then something, I guess, triathlete center that we have a little pump track by our house.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so we shred that.
Nice.
Yeah, so she will take her strider down there and rip, and then sometime we'll just like put her on the kids' red shotgun. But that's like just another day in Boulder, you know. Like
it's true,
I'm
yeah.
like a dime a dozen here in Boulder.
Yeah. Everyone's got their kid, like they're like infants strapped to the mom's chest, rubbing down a single track or whatever. Like, oh, it's a very unique place. But I think that's an athlete specific thing. You can lump yourself into all the other professional athletes that live here.
Totally.
Cool. So yeah, a couple more questions before we get into the rapid fire to finish up the podcast here. What is the next big goal?
Kona 2025. Yeah, I live for Kona. It's like Christmas to me. I think I'll probably go to the Big Island a couple times before race day. So I'm already planning my first camp for next year. And I get off the plane there and I feel like I'm at home, and it just makes me so excited.
Yeah. How much is the T100 going to play into your goals versus just being totally laser focused on Kona?
The hard-hitting questions.
Was that the hardest hitting question?
I think so. Kona will be my focus next year.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see which athletes go which direction. I think everyone's in a very learning curve state.
Yeah, I think no one really knew how this year would go, and maybe like some of the organizations didn't know how this year would go, and we're seeing what's successful and what's not and what's conducive to sort of long-term performance. I really value my autonomy and getting to race where I race and when I want to race there. So I think I'll be like really looking for that sort of approach next season as I build towards Kona, like for better or for worse. You know, like in big sports, there's one day that matters and you got to show up on that day as the best version of yourself. And I'll be doing, you know, whatever I can to do that.
Is there ever a world where you go to Kona 2025, you win, and then you go back to ITU and go for LA?
Okay, so I have some like crazy, I have a lot of crazy ideas. Like, I'm going to speak it out into the universe. The other day I texted Steve and I was like, Steve, I think that I want to start a production company and I don't want to do it right now, but like, I just want to put it out into the universe to you via text message right now for like a few years down the road, you know, when I'm pursuing my next big thing. And like, I just want you to think about it. So I had these like crazy ideas. I'm a big ideas person. I'm not practical. I'm not risk averse, which can be problematic sometimes, but I come up with crazy ideas. Like I want to do Cape Epic sometime.
Nice. Yeah, totally.
He tells me I'm not allowed to change sports again. And if
you don't have to change sports to do Cape Epic. You can just do it.
Yeah, exactly. But like he says, if I change sports again, that my family will not be there or involved.
Oh, yeah. So you're well, ITU is still triathlon.
I think he feels like it's a different sport. So I don't know. Like I'd have to win really big.
Yeah. So you weren't like motivated by going again 27 or something? Like if you went there and you won big, let's say for example, you won big in 25.
Yeah.
Could you be just like done?
Oh man, I don't know. It's crazy because winning is intoxicating and you just think that like you just want to do it again. Yeah. So I don't know when the time will be that you know, I'm ready to move on. I think I get so nervous for races still and so excited. And I think when that isn't there anymore, then it would probably be time. And I think when I don't feel like my best is ahead of me, I don't imagine that I will like, I'm not going to race forever. You know, like I am a perfectionist and when I do something, I want to do it really well. And I want to feel like I can always be getting better. And I think when I feel my best is not ahead of me, then it'll be time for something else.
So the LA is a maybe, a hard maybe.
I had Nib in the pool the other day trying to convince me that I should do LA.
Here we go, me and Taylor.
And then another unnamed athlete told me that Taylor shouldn't be trying to recruit old athletes.
Ouch.
Which I kind of took offense to. I was like, speak for yourself, girlfriend.
Yeah. People are starting to call me old and I'm 31. I don't know, like somehow. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
You're a baby.
All right, cool. I'll take that. All right. I've really enjoyed this. This is so good. I always finish up the podcast with some rapid fire questions. I've got 6.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Biggest rival on the race course?
Myself.
Ooh, that's a good one. Favorite ride in Boulder so far?
St. Vrain, peak to peak.
Word.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Word, left hand.
I did that yesterday.
Yeah, it's so good. Right now with the leaves too.
Oh yeah, you go up Brainerd a little bit. It's good to go. What's one thing that Skylar does every day that makes you smile?
Oh, so many things. That's tough. She's really into twirling.
Twirling. Mm-hmm. Nice. Very cool. What's the ideal time of day to start a key workout?
8 a.m.
Yeah, agreed. Most influential person in your endurance sport career?
Magdalena Boulay. She's an Olympic marathoner. She was one of my coaches at Cal, coached me professionally, and has just spoken so much positivity in my life. She said to me when I was 18, she said, "You will be your best in your mid-30s. You just need to find a way to stay in this game long enough."
Well, here you go. Here you are.
Here I am.
All right, last one. One mantra or piece of advice you go back to or tell yourself frequently?
Yes, yes, yes.
There we go. All right, that's all I've got. Thank you so much, Chelsea.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for welcoming me to Boulder. I think this town can sometimes feel a little, can feel like a little cliquey, but you have welcomed me with open arms and it meant a lot.
Oh, you know what? Anyone who wants to come here, you just let me know. Hang out with Chelsea and I. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.